I had a wonderful relationship with my father. His name was John Lionel Hebert, and he was a guy that could fix anything, he could build anything, he could plan anything, anything to do with wood, metal, you name it, he could fix it. And I was attracted to that. When I was 5 years old, in one of my dad's projects, he was remodeling the kitchen and redoing the countertops and putting in Formica glue coverings on the countertops and the behind the stove. And back then in 1970, my dad was using a highly flammable type Formica glue, which was better than the non-flammable because it was a lot stronger in its adhesiveness. And at the time, I had a Chihuahua named Muncher who was sick, and my mom was outside taking care of the Chihuahua. He had to have a shot. He had a real bad cold, and thank God she was out there, because if not, she would have been inside when this accident occurred. But my dad turned the hot water heater off, the floor furnace off, the little pilot light, but he forgot the pilot light on the gas stove right where he was working with the countertops and the adhesive piece that he was putting behind the stove, like when my mama fried chicken. And I was sitting at one of the counters, and I'm minding my business. I'm watching my dad. You know, I love being with my dad. Whatever work he was doing, I was there. Well, I happened to be there with this incident, and lo and behold, I happened to look up, and there was a flash. The windows were open. It was due in November because he was trying to get the house remodeled for Thanksgiving for my mom so we could have company over. But there was an air fume mixture. My dad forgot the pilot light on the gas stove right where he was working, and it went up in flames. And when I looked up, I saw the flames, and I thought to myself, man, I got to get out of here. So I can remember just throwing the little Tonka truck down where I was playing, and I ran out the front door. But when I got outside, I realized that Daddy wasn't with me. So I'm like, man, what am I gonna do? Thinking to myself, I ran back in the house. But as I'm running back in the house, Daddy has got the can, it's caught on fire, so he's trying to get rid of it. So I'm running in the house, and Daddy throws the can of glue while it's on fire, and it hits the ceiling. I remember it hitting the ceiling because I watched it, and it came down on the right side of me. And when the glue landed on me, I can remember feeling the most excruciating pain that I ever felt. And I ran, and I'm on fire. I had a red turtleneck shirt on. My dad, he runs to the back door, but he can't get out because of the flames. My mama hears screaming. Now that's normal because me and my dad played all the time. But you add smoke to screaming, something's wrong. So she looked outside the back door of the shed where she was tending to my Chihuahua Muncher, and she saw the whole back of the house on fire. She hurried up and run up on the porch, grabs one of the wrought iron garden chairs that was outside, and beat the door down. My mama told me later that my daddy ran past her and said, go get Kyle. He's in there. Go look for him. Well, I went and ran between the refrigerator and the deep freezer, and I can remember just laying there. And I'm gonna tell you, I didn't feel any pain. It's something about in us that God created in us that shuts us down, because I didn't feel the pain no more. But I remember my mom jumping on top of me, literally. And I found out later that my mom had put several blankets on me. My dad ran out the door, rolled in the grass, put himself out, grabbed the hose, came back in the house while my mom was trying to suffocate the fire on me, literally using her body. My mama wound up getting third-degree burns all on her arms and her chest. And she finally got the fire out on me, and my dad put the fire out inside the house. So my mom was burned, I was critically burned, 3/4 of my body, and you could actually see my chin here. It had burned the skin all the way down. You could see the bone. And me, my dad, and my mom went out on the front porch, and we stood out there. And of course, all the neighbors were out, and they called 911. And I can remember the fire truck and the ambulance pulling up, and they brought me to Charity Hospital in New Orleans, which was at that time was the only burn unit. So this was a very horrific accident. that I went through, but I witnessed the love of a father. I cannot remember a day, and a mother who put me out with her body, but I can't remember a day when they finally admitted me after going through the burn unit at Charity Hospital, and they put me at Hotel Dieu in New Orleans, which is now modern day University Hospital. I can't remember a day my daddy not coming to see me. He wound up staying about 6 months in the hospital, and I stayed 1 year and 8 months. I got put in ICU. But I had to learn to walk, I had to learn to talk, and both my mom and dad was there, but my dad spent a lot of time with me. And that took about 2 years in total. You know, I was 1 year and 8 months, and then another 4 months going through physical therapy. I wound up having 46 major operations over a 12-year span. But I had acquired a lot of hate, a lot of anger. You know, kids can be, very horrific, very, very mean. And I couldn't go to school until I was 6 years old. But I wound up at a very young age, I got a reputation for fighting, and it made me feel good. So whenever someone would make fun of my burns, I would just fight them. Well, you know, fighting and being in school is not a good thing. I got called to the office a lot. I wound up going to detention a lot. I stayed in a lot of trouble. I got the paddle even though I was burned. So I went through a lot of correction, but it didn't help. So when I reached 12 years old, my dad signed me up for football at Versailles Booster. It was the local football team, and I got to play a season there. And for the first time in my life, I really did feel some relief because I could legally run over somebody. I could legally hit somebody and nobody would punish me. I could never, ever remember my dad not being at a practice or a football game. And then I started running track. But not only was I getting better with my temper, I was actually becoming a pretty good football player. So when I reached Chalmette High School, my freshman year, I actually made the varsity. My mama was born in 1927. My dad was born in 1925. I had the best of both worlds. They had me in their 40s. So I had a grandpa and a grandma and a mom and a dad all in the same package. So they were old school. But we would go to church sometimes, but they never opened the Bible with me. But I never saw my mom and dad argue. They lived a very moral life. They loved each other. They helped each other, and they loved me and my brother John. One evening, this is during football season, I had come home and took my shower, went to bed, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear my mom screaming. Now that's odd. Like I said, I've never heard my mom and dad ever argue. I'm like, well, what's going on with my mom? Where's my dad? I jump up out of bed and I run in the hallway, and I see my mom running to me. And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? She's screaming, Daddy's dead, Daddy's dead, Daddy's dead. I said, Daddy's dead? Well, let me tell you, my whole world changed. I just lost my best friend. I just lost my father. I just lost my all in all. And I was just broken. My mama let me walk in the room because I needed to see this for my own eyes. And I did. I saw my dad laying with no breath in his lungs in the bed. I can remember the pale grayish color. So he had been dead for a while. He died in his sleep. I literally walked out the door. I actually blamed her for him being dead. And I called some friends. This is my senior year of high school. So I was going to play football for UL, the Raging Cajuns, and go to college and play ball. From that day, I never looked back. At school, sports, I threw my helmet down for a biker's helmet, partied. I did every drug under the sun, from marijuana to acid to ecstasy to crack cocaine to regular cocaine, PCP, crank, you name it, I partied with it. That's where the arrest started. I got arrested for the first time. I had just turned 18 years old. I had a hit and run. with a vehicle, and they brought, I mean, just turned 18. And it didn't stop there. I began doing a life sentence on the installment plan from age 17 to 34. But in that time frame, a lot of fighting, a lot of womanizing, using women, beating women. I was in full self-destruct mode. And I continued in full self-destruct mode until 34. I was allowed to come home in 1999. And it was the early part of 99. And my mom was staying with my nanny, my aunt, her sister. Well, I wound up meeting a girl when I first come out of prison named Susan. And we got close. And I wound up bringing her home to live in Mama and Nanny's house. But Susan and I had a very drunken, drug-addicted, violent relationship. But we stayed together. We lived in one of the rooms. I would go to work and she would stay there and take care of Mama and Nanny. It was a Thursday night, 2 for 1 at the daiquiri shop. Let's go next door, meet the new neighbors, and let's go get a daiquiri. So I got up out of bed, I threw on some shorts, and we went next door and got to meet the new neighbors and drank a couple of beers over there by their house. And the girls wanted some daiquiris. Once me and Steve jumped in my truck and we went to the daiquiri shop, I mean, it's wide open. The 2 for 1 bells going off, pool tables, I got girls everywhere. And Steve and I walk in there, and the first thing I do is I get 2 shots of Jägermeister, and I hit both of them. And I'm supposed to be getting daiquiris for the girls and going back to the house. Well, I hit them 2 shots of Jägermeister and wound up getting me a daiquiri and Steve a daiquiri, and I look over, Steve's by the pool table, so I then went over by the pool table, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. So I turn around, it's Susan, and she's like, "Where you been?" And I'm like, I'm not in the mood for this. So I said, "Excuse me, ladies." So her and I gave some real good choice words. I gave her some money for the daiquiri, and I said, "Let's roll, Steve." He's arguing with his girl. And we hopped in my truck, and we wound up going to Fat City. So we stayed out at Fat City. We partied. We wound up going to Last Stop and drinking. I mean, I was floored. Come back home about 3 in the morning. So as I'm coming down Shangri-La, I see Susan sitting outside. She's waiting on me. I said, "Oh, this is going to be bad." And I can remember pulling in the driveway, and Steve jumped out the truck. He said, "I'll see you later, man." And he ran to his house. As I got out the truck, here comes Susan. And I said, "Susan, I don't want to hear it." Boy, she went to cackling and yakking. Boy, I punched her dead in the mouth. Boom! She hit the ground. She got up swinging. Well, while we out there making 1,000 noises and all kind of screaming and yelling, my aunt comes out, my nanny comes outside. "What's going on?" I said, "Not tonight, Nanny, not tonight." She wound up getting in between Susan and I, and I'm ready to go inside, but she's getting in between me and Susan and me's fighting, and now Nanny's getting in my face, so I wound up knocking both of them down. And then I went inside. So I punched my aunt in the mouth, and I punched Susan in the mouth again, and I went in. My mom was standing by the door. "What you doing?" I said, "I'm finishing it, Mama. I'm going to bed." So I went to bed that night, and when I woke up the next morning, Susan's all bruised up, and I saw my poor Nanny sitting on the sofa, and I had hit her right in the nose and blackened both eyes. And I went and sat by. I'm half hungover with the saddest look on her face. She says, "Kyle, this has got to stop. It's got to stop." And I said, "Nanny, I want it to stop." And when I came home from work, the police were sitting at the house, and they saw the bruises. It took 8 days. One of the neighbors wound up calling. They saw my aunt outside bruised up. They saw Susan all bruised up. Every girlfriend I had, I abused. Every friend that I had, I used. You know, every place that I went, I would cause a scene. I drank. I wasted money. I abused my mother. You know, my poor mama loved me. My mama wanted to stand with me and all I did was push her away. And here's a woman that used her body to put the flames out on me, saved my life. I literally hated. I hated her. I blamed her for my father's death. I blamed her for the burns that I had. I blamed her for the anger that I had. But it was something in me that when the police put the handcuffs on me on August 19th, 1999, something amazing happened. A peace came over me. And I'm gonna tell you, when the cell door shut, it shut for the first time. It actually went off like a church bell. So it was an 8-month period that I stayed in the parish jail. And while there, I got a taste of the Lord. No commitment, but people showing me the Bible, praying with me and spending time with me in the scriptures. And when I went to court for my trial, I took a plea bargain. I never ever denied putting my hands on Susan. I never ever denied putting my hands on Nanny. So the judge offered me a 40-year sentence and left it at attempt first-degree murder. But after I received the notification that the next day I'm going to be transferred to Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, formerly known as the bloodiest prison in the world, the men came to me and they said, "Hey man, you're going to the best place you can possibly go to." Angola has a 85% rating of people who have life sentences that will never ever leave the prison. They will die in prison. That's the number that they give, 85%. Well, I had a 40-year sentence, which was truly odd to even be going into this prison. But as we're going down Highway 61, all of this is going through my head. I can remember going through the front gate, and as I'm looking, but there's bars that you can barely see out the window. And as you look out, as I'm looking out the window, I see a sign in the distance. It said, "The Land of New Beginnings." Land of New Beginnings? What is this? I said, man, that's something. The Land of New Beginnings. So I just kind of said a silent prayer to myself. I said, God, may this be the land of new beginnings for me. This was my first letter, being incarcerated. And lo and behold, a small picture falls out. And I look down and I pick it up and I look at it, and there's this beautiful baby boy in the picture. So I turned it around and said, "Hello, Daddy. 3-week-old Matthew." Like, what? And so as I read the letter, it was from Melissa. And I seen her occasionally and we would talk. But it was a very distant relationship. It was really a one-day stand. And Melissa, in the letter, described Matthew as being my son. And a joy came over me. But at the same time, I began to worry. Here I am incarcerated. How could I possibly be a father to a son that's not even around me, one who much less lived in Florida? I'm locked up. I have a 40-year sentence. So how am I going to be a father? Lo and behold, a man by the name of Manny Mill pops up at Angola. And I get to meet this man. Manny was this wild Cuban running around Angola, had favor with all the wardens, especially Warden Burl Kane. And he brought a program in called Awana. And Awana had a program inside the program called Malachi Dads, which taught us to be the fathers in the order of role, in the role of prophet, priest, and king of our household. And it didn't matter if we was incarcerated. We went through books that taught us, especially using the Bible, and how to be a father, how to love our children through writing letters, through doing emails. And they had another program that was in conjunction with the umbrella of Awana, Malachi Dads, with Returning Hearts. Well, in 2009, I had the blessed opportunity to meet that 2-week-old young man, my son Matthew, for the first time at Returning Heart Celebration. And I got to look him in the eye and apologize to him and tell him how much I loved him. And that for the first time, he told me how much he loved me and that he had forgiven me. Changed my life. But all of these various ministries help to mold me into the man that I am today. Studying the Word, and I got to, I was a part of the Angelite prison magazine, so I got to follow Manny around and learn everything about Koinonia House. And, come to find out, Manny was a prisoner. I wound up serving a total of 22 years. In 2021, a law was passed through the legislative session called Act 122, which allowed men who had a 30 years or more set sentence and was 45 years old and had served 20 years. It's called the 2045 bill. So December 15th of 2021, I sat in front of a 3-man board and they unanimously voted for me to be released from the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And on December 17th, Matthew showed up at the front gate with a dear friend of mine, Kerry Myers, who's part of the Parole Project Transition House in New Orleans, and was also my editor in the prison magazine, The Angelite, and they took me to the Parole Project in Baton Rouge. Riverside Baptist, pastored by Larry Hubbard, who used to come into Angola and teach Bible study, who is a friend of Manny Mill. They also found out that I was home. In the first week, he came and got me from the Parole Project, and they built a fence of love around me, modeled after Koinonia House. As a matter of fact, Manny Zooms with Pastor Larry and teaches the church on how to be a fence of love, how to take care of the baby, not just give birth to the baby, but to take care of the baby and not to allow the baby to run into Egypt. So I have a wonderful fence of love, a wonderful support system through Riverside Baptist in Watson, Louisiana, pastored by Larry Hubbard. And right now I'm on staff. I know the Lord has equipped me with degrees. I got a Master of Divinity through the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. So I believe with all my heart, His will is for me to do ministry work, particularly in helping fathers to be the prophet, priest, and king of their household, work side by side with fathers who don't know their children. I love the incarcerate. I believe that the Lord has called me to that ministry. The best advice that I could give to a kid that was in my shoes who had the anger problems and blamed everybody is, number one, talk about it. Discuss it. If you're not living in a Christian home and your parents don't know the Lord, that's a hard position. But I would have to say, talk about your anger. Think before you react. Do not go putting your hands on people, because I came from a good home. I came from a very working, ethical, moral family, and I wound up 98 arrests and 4 felony convictions, and I wound up beating up my aunt. But instead of reacting, we need to begin to listen to our emotions. If you have an anger problem, talk to somebody about it. Pull your mama over, pull your daddy. If they don't want to listen, pull a friend over. But if you live in a Christian home, seek the Lord. Seek the Lord. Ask the Holy Spirit to change your heart. Ask the Holy Spirit to remove the anger. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you into all humility and love, because love does not hurt people. Love does not put their hands on people. Love forgives. Love walks away and keeps their hands to themselves.
When I first met my father in 2009, one thing that I told him, and my mom made sure that I told this to him, was that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And we knew of his regenerative heart. We knew of his faith because of the doctrine and the message of Jesus' love for me had always been pushed in his letters. He had been so involved in my life for so long, from when I can remember, when I could communicate with him, that whenever he was out, whenever he got out 7 months ago, it was like we hadn't missed a beat. Our message this last year and a half has been, we've got work to do. We've got people that we've got to help because of the unique position that God has put us in. I mean, there were days, and even now, where I'll see a little kid walking with their father and be like, I wish I had that, but I also know that my father has been there for me every step of the way, and it's an honor for me to be able to be his son and to be able to use our ministry of reconciliation as a message to share with others, to give others hope, because I know that there are so many people incarcerated that do not have a relationship with their children for a multitude of reasons. So honestly, it's been refreshing. It's still a little bit of process that needs to be done, but it's been refreshing and it's been really nice.